Hi, Joel.
Bob.
How are you?
Stressed out a little bit.
Well, you've got a tough job, you know. At times like this, America turns to you.
No. It's not the job. It's you. Because I've told this before, I'm not good with the technology. I'm worried the camera's going to fall. And I'm in my attic. It's, there's all these old dishes and stuff and musty books. And, there's I don't know what this is, okay? This stuff here, I'm surrounded by,
Joel?
I am surrounded by stuff that I find inscrutable, okay? What is
this? That doesn't really narrow it down much, Joel. Can you see this thing?
What is it? I don't understand. It's a...
Joel?
It's a tough thing for me to get in the groove, as it were. I know that you live permanently... Jesus. You live...
You can call me Bob, Joel.
The groove, Bob, and... Hey, just because you wrote the memoir doesn't give you the right to, call yourself whatever. Okay, so what do you got for me?
Well, first of all, Joel, if you'd like...
Do we have to be articulate? Because no dice.
We never count on that from you, buddy. It's your insights we're after, however crudely expressed. Can you handle that? Could we just tap into your brain?
Crudely expressed is the goal.
Beg your pardon?
Dang it. We're gonna express them very crudely today.
Okay.
So, this is a new era. This is the internet. We can say anything.
You can say go to heck, Bob, if you get mad at me.
For the love of Pete. So, we're going to talk about the Obama thing, right? Should we go right into it?
First, just quickly, by the time people watch this, they will know something we don't know yet, which is whether the Phillies win the 6th game of the World Series,
right,
and thus keep hope alive that maybe there are some things money can't buy, like the World Series.
Right, so by the time they see... I think that Boswell's analysis is pretty good, though, which is that Girardi is overmanaged. He's got his pitchers on the short rotation. Pettit's going to be up there with 3 days rest. He's used to, 5, 6. He's used to having like a weekend, a week down in the Caribbean before he pitches. He was complaining about how hard it was to pitch the other night, and he had 5 days rest, so expect him to go out and get lit up. And it goes to Game 7 tomorrow. So let's assume when this actually runs tomorrow on your little webpage thing that we'll have a Game 7 we're looking forward to, and then all hell's going to break loose.
If there's a team that should have been pitching its pitchers on only 3 days rest, I would say it's Philadelphia, so that they could get 3 games out of Cliff Lee. But we're probably getting a little too obscure for many people in our audience, although the viewer known as Nicky Bong did recently request more sports on Blogging Head, so we will view this last...
Are you a sportsman? Did you play baseball, football?
I'm a Renaissance guy. I played basketball at the high school where Shaquille O'Neal later played
Did you have a shot? You got a good stroke?
I'm not one to toot my own horn.
I bet you had an incredible stroke in high school.
I'm not going to go anywhere with that.
Yeah, exactly. But I was never much of a baller. I played a little second base because I couldn't physically throw it all the way from shortstop to first, so I played second base.
I played third base when I was 13 years old on 90-foot base paths. That's major league dimensions, and they put me at third base just to give you some idea of the kind of rocket arm I had, buddy.
Yeah, I can just imagine. Yep.
I did have to put a little arc on the ball to get it to first.
Did you have a nickname? Because they called, I was called Greeny, I was called Mugwump, all kinds of things that were not really, I guess, impressive sort of sounding things. What about you, Bob?
Nothing comes to mind. They just called me Bob.
You weren't the Splendid Splinter?
No, that would be Ted Williams. Yeah. The last thing I'll say, because this is of broad interest to all of the viewing audience, not just the sports nuts, but one thing that has been lost with the onslaught of steroids in baseball, you know what that is?
No, what would that be, Bob?
Well, you just used the term Splendid Splinter, a reference to Ted Williams, am I right?
Yes.
What's been lost is the beauty of the swing. These guys who have so much upper body strength, not all of them are on steroids. With some of them, it's just the intensive weight training they do now. The stroke
they swing
is much
so
uglier.
hard.
You look at a Ted Williams
They
stroke.
swing too hard, don't they?
Well, it's not.
Can't they slow it down a little bit?
There's not as much waste in it. You watch Ted Williams. It's like a golf swing.
They don't put their pelvis in it. It's true.
No,
they use the arms, the shoulders. No, not enough pelvis.
That's what's wrong with baseball players today. Not enough pelvis. You're exactly right.
In your day, your swing was all pelvis. It was a
my stroke, as we used to say, Joel.
Your stroke. Yeah.
Why don't we move on to politics?
Can't we come up with some kind of joke using the word pelvic? I mean, surely.
I thought I kind of laid it out there clearly enough for our more attentive viewers when I said, or stroke, as we used to call it. But whatever, no. Joel. Do we have to, spell it out for you? Okay, so the first topic will begin, now, so that this last 5 minutes...
We can delete it.
Well,
right?
No, nothing gets deleted in Blogging Heads. It's reality TV.
Wait. We can't delete that?
No way.
Because it would interfere with the integrity of the dialogue.
Exactly.
Okay.
But we digress.
No idea that was that important. So,
but I'm serious about how beautiful the Ted Williams Joe DiMaggio type swing was. It's worth YouTubing if it's on YouTube.
You ever seen that slow motion thing, that stop action thing where they show that a right-handed batter, that right as the bat is crossing the strike zone, the right hand is not touching the bat. The right hand let go.
True.
I think it's at that point the left takes over. Of course, then you think of the classic, Joe DiMaggio swing where it's all the way around the other side of his head and both hands are still gripping the handle. So maybe I'm wrong about that. I think the classic swing they've broken it down. Stop action. You're the physicist. It's the right arm gives you the impetus, but then it's all left arm for a right-handed batter.
Kind of as in golf. Well, it's kind of body at that point, and it's your left arm. We digress. Come on. Look, this Obama thing, you're very down on Obama. You wrote this thing about
Obama.
I'm not down. Today.
How can you say I'm down on Obama? I praised him fulsomely.
I'll just quote from your blog post.
That's not fair.
A year ago tonight, we saw in the streets of D.C. a love fest for the ages. Remember? You're talking about in the aftermath of Obama getting elected. It was an explosion of euphoria. And then you go blah, 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 being a little on the wordy side as you are. And then finally you say, a year later, it's a not-so-happy anniversary. And you join the conventional wisdom in saying that the election results on Tuesday night spell doom for everything that's good, just, and noble.
No, what I said, quite sensibly, rationally, and based on, informed thought here, was that if you look at the very dramatic numbers with independent voters in New Jersey and Virginia, that would give you pause if you were the president's political advisor. Now, Axelrod came on TV or talked to the media this morning and said, well, forget the gubernatorial races. Look what happened in New York 23. That's the real analog for the national scene because the Republican Party is in complete disarray. They had a moderate Republican running who was forced out of the race by the right wing, and that the chaos in the GOP is the real story.
Yeah.
So that's what the White House is spending
that's
publicly.
That's what I'd focus on if I were them of these three elections.
Right.
Yes.
But do you think Axelrod is saying that privately to Obama? I don't know. I don't have the slightest idea what Axelrod is actually saying, but my guess is that he, like a lot of political people, has to focus on the downside of things sometimes. And the fact is that the independents in massive numbers switched party from 1 year ago in those two key states, New Jersey and Virginia, both of which were in the Obama column last time. Virginia, very much of a swing state last time. New Jersey, a little more reliably Democratic. But you see these big numbers in the independents. So that would give me pause. And I would say, okay, what are our policies that are potentially not going down well with independent voters? And so in my blog, and I appreciate that you bringing it up. It's called Achenblog.
It's called Achenblog. The Washington Post. It holds like a hallowed place in Washington Post online history. There's like a shrine to it in the WP whatever NI, the Washington Post Interactive headquarters in Virginia, if that still even exists.
No, I think they're pretty much shutting that one down.
No, that's too bad, because there was this
shutting it all down.
There was this timeline in which you were featured. The Achenblog debuts, 1913.
It was the first blog. It was the first blog.
Right, and still the finest, some say.
No one has said that, actually.
You're not kidding.
So anyway, the point is that maybe it's kind of conventional wisdom. Gene Robinson, who I admire a lot, said the same thing in the paper today, saying that, you look at the independent voters, it is going to probably give Obama reason to essentially govern from the center. I mean, that, in my argument...
Isn't he already trying to do that?
Well, I mean, think
the counter-narrative is that the reason he couldn't mobilize the Democrats in New Jersey is because he's lost the trust of liberals precisely because he's a compromiser.
Well, you can make that argument, okay? But when it comes to actually winning elections, although certainly holding and mobilizing your base is crucial, and that played a major role in Obama winning last time, simply mobilizing your base will not win you elections. You have to carry the middle. I mean, it's a numbers game. If you have, a 30 percentage point swing in independent voters, okay, it's simple numbers. You have to win some of those people back into your column, or else you cannot win elections. Now, it depends, of course, in a congressional election, it depends district by district. Plus, you have the factor of personality. I mean, Krieg Deeds was not a great candidate. Obama is a great candidate, and as I say in the blog, I don't think this actually tells us anything about 2012. No. I think Obama still looks like he's on track to have a successful presidency. But what I'll say is, in terms of next November, if I was the advisor to the Democratic National Committee, the Senatorial Campaign Committee, the Congressional Campaign Committees, I would say, we have to make sure that we can sell ourselves in the middle of the spectrum. That'd be my practical advice.
Let me tell you why the Democrats are not in as much trouble in 2010 as you think, okay?
Okay,
For starters, I would go further than you just went and say that neither of the two gubernatorial candidates on the Democratic side was a dream candidate. John Corzine has never been Mr. Charisma, and this is a very bad time to be thought of as just a rich guy who bought his way into politics. I mean, in the current economic climate, rich people are not very popular. He used to be head of an investment bank, so him least of all, and the Bloomberg results in New York suggest that rich people are just not in vogue right now, okay? So he's just not a great candidate. So much for that data point. Moreover, let me...
your point is you have two data points, neither one of which is really reliable for anything at a national level.
Right, and I don't even think New York 23 is especially reliable. As you mentioned in your blog, there's some question as to whether the fact that her name was still on the ballot, the Republican who dropped out's name was still on the ballot, kind of, confused people and so on. So it's not clear what that means, really. There is a civil war within the Republican Party, and that's presumably good news for the Democrats, but it's not clear what that result actually means. Okay, but my counter narrative begins a little less than a year ago, which is yours began exactly a year ago, which is in January when Obama took office. Yes, there was a lot of hope, excitement, and anticipation. There was also a lot of fear and dread. If you'll recall, there was a very real fear that we were sliding into a global depression, right? And I remember thinking, if we avert depression and get on the path to recovery, Obama's got to go down as the hero, right? Well, we have averted global depression. The problem is that the recovery has not really kicked in a way that makes people feel much better about their objective economic circumstances, right? So I'm about to put a graph up on the screen that comes from today's New York Times business section. Okay.
Wait. You have graphic visual.
Oh, we have special effects. You can't see this, but you would not believe these special effects, Joel. You're going to have to put on sunglasses, buddy, because there's a lot of white paper here. Now, this is job losses every month, net job losses per month. Okay. And they have been, we are still losing jobs each month. But this chart for the last more than a year shows the monthly numbers, and you will see that the worst number for net job losses is in right when Obama took over. And since then, the numbers have been dropping at a rate that suggests that well before November 2010, we will be having monthly job gains if this trend is sustained. And it's a little bumpy, you know. In fact, numbers are going to come out, I think, Friday that will help us figure this out and extrapolate a little more clearly. But it looks like by March or so, we will be in net job gain territory. I think if you have 6 months or so of job growth, it's going to appreciably affect the climate in which Obama and thus the Democrats find themselves.
Yeah, if the stock market's at 14, the Dow's at 14,000 next November, and the economy is growing great guns. I agree. Obviously, that will help
I don't even
the
think
party
it's about
in power.
the Dow has recovered substantially.
Substantially, but
I don't think it's about
unemployment's
that. I think for most people, that's not what the core of the economic security question is about. It's about, do they have a job? What would happen to them if they lost a job?
Right.
Would they have health care?
Okay. Let me ask you, do you disagree with my analysis that independent voters tend to look at things like taxes, fiscal trajectory?
I disagree with that so strongly that I can barely contain myself right now, Joel. I'm going to quote from your...
Should we take a pause? Should we have a break? Time out here while you calm down?
I feel like I need one, because I could just go...
Okay.
It could get,
Don't you have
this thing could go viral.
This thing
could go viral. I could totally lose it. Okay, here we go. You're right. But in the middle of the spectrum are lots of people who want competent government that doesn't overreach and pays for its programs. Now, when I saw that, I thought, what nonsense. People don't want to pay for the programs because that means higher taxes. Your next sentence says they vote on taxes, fiscal policy, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's a contradiction there. If you're saying they do want the programs paid for, but they want lower taxes, well, it's kind of hard to have both. The fact is, people...
No. It's very simple. Let me explain to you.
Yeah.
They would rather not have the program, okay, if it's not paid for. I think that the people, independents in general, tend to be kind of like the people who balance their checkbook very carefully at the end of the month. And if they see that they're creating an entitlement program, for example, but it's not paid for, that's not going to go over real well. I mean, I'm talking about people who are not culture warriors. They're not the people who get
let's take people on Medicare.
You mean guns or gay marriage, that kind of thing, but rather are more likely to feel like they want a competent government. And that the problem with the Democrats that they have to overcome is the reputation for being tax and spend, which I think that Bill Clinton was very effective at saying, the era of big government is over. And I think that with Obama, although he has rhetorically positioned himself in the middle, and he has shown that he's willing to, at least make the effort to reach out and compromise. His job is complicated by the fact that the GOP seems to be completely captured by its extremist wing. But right now he has to show at some point that the Democrats and under his leadership are not going to break the bank. And I think that there are some independents who worry about that. I don't think that they're right-wing. I don't think that this is, particularly a Republican viewpoint. I think it's, they're wanting to see that the numbers add up. If they don't, they'll say, well, then you're going to have to scale back your ambitions.
I just think that's a relatively, elite concern. I think a pretty small slice of the American people spend their time worrying whether, what's going to happen with the deficit. I mean, more should worry, but I don't really see it. And certainly one area where you just don't hear anything about it is...
You and I don't even get out. You haven't left your basement in weeks, okay?
I'm on the second floor.
So how would we even know what people think? We're making it up.
I mingle with people every day, Joel. I was
Mingling
at the YMCA only hours ago. Joel?
So you mingle as a form of researching your opinions.
Yes, totally. I'm a walking opinion poll.
Okay. So anyway, I mean, you could be right, and possibly I'm projecting a little bit, but I think the numbers. Ask your friend Mike Kinsley or someone like that. I mean, it's hard to see how the numbers work out over time. And let's put it this way: the projected costs of some of these programs are more likely to be accurate than the projected savings of some of these programs. In other words, these things really aren't likely to cost a lot of money, and the money that they're going to use, to pay for it, the savings, such as we're going to cut some of these Medicare programs, that's less likely to happen. So if you look at the sort of the political plausibility percentages of the outgo and the income, it's a little bit out of balance. So the concern would be that in passing health care, for example, that it will wind up costing more than they say it will, and I think that's gonna hurt them in the middle.
It could, although something
I could be wrong. I mean, you're right. The only way to pay for it is to raise taxes in the middle, because that's where the money is too. You can't just soak the rich. You have to, for example, tax healthcare benefits at work. Why should regular income be taxable, but healthcare benefits are not taxable? I mean, this is it'd be a painful step for Obama to endorse that. He said he won't do it. But this whole town is so averse to pain. It's so deeply embedded. Listen to me. Okay, hold on. It's so deeply embedded in this town that you can never ask anyone to sacrifice. You can never do anything that might actually hurt someone. Unless they're like millionaires. Of course, you can tax millionaires. But the idea of telling the middle class, oh, we're going to tamper with one of your tax breaks. Joel, can't do that. Can't do that.
You're giving us an kind of embarrassing glimpse of the inner Joel here. You're just projecting. You're just this conservative guy from the backwoods of Florida projecting your worldview on the average voter. Admit it.
Well, isn't that what people do?
It's a living, and you've done very well at it. But some of us seek a deeper truth, Joel.
I've been on the record fiscally. I've been a hawk for 20-something years. I mean, before anyone else even cared about it, I wrote a story for the Miami Herald Sunday magazine. You know that whole thing. They had the picture of the people in lingerie lounging around the hotel for artwork because the story was so boring. We had to spruce it up with sort of soft porn. But in any case, so yeah, I mean, I think that's good governance.
I mean, you saying that this election was about, deficit hawkism is like me saying that it was about our not having a global nuclear non-proliferation regime, I think that's really important, but I'm not under the illusion that the average voter does. So you're projecting more than I am, and I think you should feel pretty bad about that. Joel, did I lose you? You there?
No, I'm just trying to decide if I should feel bad about it. And you know what? I've decided to actually feel good about it.
Okay. Well, your resilience is really one of
your... Look, we all project, okay? We all project. I mean, we all, I did not say this election was about fiscal, policy.
Yeah.
I do think that's one factor that may influence the independent voters. But I have to take another look at the exit polls.
Okay, but one
I got to break down the film on it.
Fiscal conservatism. Can you explain to me why, in the case of something like Afghanistan, like whether to send troops to Afghanistan, I mean, there must be some taboo against mentioning the cost. I never hear that in debate. They're talking about sending 40,000 more troops. That's got to be tens of billions of dollars, right?
There was an estimate that Mike O'Hanlon put out.
Who favors
another Princeton Tiger from way back?
Is he?
Saying that it costs $1 million per soldier.
Right. So that would be $40
billion per soldier.
$40 billion.
That's $40 billion. Okay. Now the Pentagon listen to this. The Pentagon disputed that. And they said no, it's only $500,000 per soldier. It's only about $500,000 per soldier.
So $20 billion.
So it's either $20 billion or it's $40 billion. But that's I think that's real money.
A friend of mine pointed out that we are already spending in Afghanistan 3 times the GDP of Afghanistan.
Yeah, here's a way to look at it. I believe the budget for NIH, which has grown enormously since the 90s, it's the one sort of scientific branch of government that's really done well in the budgets. It's been flat for a few years, but NIH spends about $27 billion a year. So you're talking about, the equivalent of all those institutes of health, a year to send,
another 40,000. Not to mention the total cost of having all
not to mention the total cost,
whatever
but
thousand.
Just that additional number of troops is like sending over your whole NIH budget.
Right, but we can't afford health care is the line. We can, we're allowed to have discussions about,
Wait, that's a really glib equivalency, isn't it?
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Just making sure someone knows that.
No, it's a serious point that we.
If we, we can afford nuclear submarines, but we can't help the poor.
Well, I'm just saying that the money should figure into both debates equally, and it doesn't. It doesn't.
Well, let me stop and say that although I agree that the money has to be noted in with the military strategy. That's not going to be pivotal. I mean, you have to have a workable military strategy. If it costs a lot of money, but that's the only way the strategy will work. You have to do that. You can't have a strategy and say you cannot send over 60,000 troops to Afghanistan and say we cannot afford to have this be a workable strategy. You're kind of screwed. You cannot say that to the troops. Okay,
such as it is, I don't even personally think there's a benefit in doing it. But if you think there's a benefit, you can say it's not worth the cost. You should be allowed to say that. You should be allowed to say yes, this will help a little if you think it will.
Absolutely,
but it doesn't justify the cost.
I agree. You have to do cost-benefit analysis on everything, but I do not agree with you that in the same way you look at you pencil out healthcare reform, you also pencil out the Afghanistan war. I do think there's sort of two different categories of policies, and you have a lot of people under fire over there.
You've walked into my trap, Joel. You know why?
You know what? I can hear. You don't have to shout. I can hear.
Tom Friedman against you. You are toast. You are gone. Because now Tom Friedman's on my side.
Why are you shouting at me?
Because I have an intense interest in public policy. Did you
just mention Tom Friedman? God, I'm shuddering now. What? You're playing a Friedman card.
When he wrote his somewhat unexpected, and I thought, welcome column, saying we should not increase our troop presence in Afghanistan and basically should find a way to shrink it. What he said was, ultimately, America's got to be a great country. I mean, I'll get this wrong if I elaborate more than that, but the point was that national security and keeping America strong in an inner sense are not unrelated, right? I mean, we need to be, for the purpose of projecting soft power, for example, we need to be a country that is itself working. We need to be a good role model. We need to be able to say, we know how you get things done. Look at our society. We have a multi-ethnic society that works and blah, blah, blah. In a lot of ways, the fact is that thinking about national security and thinking about the domestic strength of our country are along the same dimension, as I recall that column. So, now Tom Friedman's on my side, and if I were you, I would just press the little stop capture button on your computer, because you lost. I've got Tom.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember you being this hysterical the last few times we've talked. I mean, are you having a hormonal issue?
And some people admitted that. And I'm just trying to...
because is it a glandular problem that you're having? Because they have incredible medicine.
Something
now.
I should share with you, Joel, is I did reach puberty this month.
Okay, I was about to say. All right, so what else you got?
Well,
you win. Tom Friedman said something. I mean, I didn't even follow that.
I know I win, but I want to give all the credit to Tom here. Okay.
Yes, you're right. We cannot afford to win in Afghanistan. We should, we should take all that military money and sort of jobs program in raking leaves.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm starting to feel a contradiction between my supporting the Phillies and what I just said, because I'm supporting the Phillies. The Phillies. The
philatelists. The Philadelphia philatelists. Or can we talk about philately on the web, or is that too? Don't put philately on the search engine because we'll get some strange hits, get some weird links.
Never mind. I was going to say, but I won't. No, you don't want to know. You want to make fun of me when I'm about to reveal an inner weakness in one of my arguments? But you would rather joke at my expense? Fine.
No. Do my work
No. That's okay. Let's move on.
What about the Phillies, though? I missed the whole Phillies connection. What about
I was just saying that I just maybe, on the one hand, I said I'm for the Phillies because there should be some things that aren't reducible to money in a sense, which I think the Yankees represent the reduction of baseball to money. And then yet I was arguing that everything should be able to be, quantifiable in terms of dollars in the policy realm.
Yeah, but whatever happened to Valor?
Did you know Valor?
Yeah. She was an incredible philatelist.
Really? Well, that's what happened.
Okay, so onward. Can we just...
Yeah. So usually, just to move to the next subject, usually, in exchange for your coming on Blogging Heads TV, since after all, you are such a busy man, you demand that I read, some of your long-form journalism that we can then discuss on the air. Well, this time it's even worse. You've demanded that I read some of your long-form journalism that is itself about long-form journalism. So this was twice as tedious as your average assignment, Joel.
But let me point something out, okay? My long article on narrative journalism was, and this ran in the Washington Post last week in the style section, was not itself a narrative. I mean, except to the extent it had a couple little moments where you can sort of almost, picture a narrative. But essentially...
It starts out with Gary Smith writes very long stories for a living, and we, picture Gary Smith, right?
Yeah, for just a minute. But the fact is that, like you, I am pedantic. I'm not a narrative writer. Your Memoir of God recently was not a narrative book. It was more like a screed or a polemic, or it was very, and you have to help me with, is it called pedagogical, but you're elucidating and explaining and you're carrying on with all your ideas. This is not a book that it says, here I am, Bob Wright, I walk down the street to the cafe, I climb the tree, I hang upside down by my legs, and I think about, nature. It's not like that at all. You just come right out of the box with, in the beginning, there was this book, and, in other words, you are not a narrative writer. Is that fair to say?
No, it's not fair to say. My first book was much more the kind of you are there journalism you just alluded to, including some first-person stuff. And
okay.
I would argue
I know, you got that move. I know. Look, you can throw from third to first. You can do narrative. I'm saying, but let's face it, some of us have the instinct to teach, and that's what you want to teach us. You figure all the ideas out, and then you say, okay, look, this is how it works. Ba-dum. You lay it all out, okay? You're not really a yarn spinner.
I'm not a yarn spinner.
You're not a yarn spinner.
Is true.
And I'm not either. I wish I was. Whenever I try to spin a yarn, I can do it, but it's like, I would not say I'm particularly adept at it.
Right. Well, with you, it's the punchlines that get in the way of the narrative, and with me, it's the profound truths.
That's funny. Okay.
But anyway, we digress. This is one of these. What you do is you lament the decline of long narrative fiction, which is or nonfiction, which makes you sound like an old person, frankly, Joel. But go ahead and tell us about it.
I am an old person. I'm almost 50 years old. If I have to sound like an old person, I'm being authentic. I know you're old. You're older. But getting back to your pedantic problem, let me just say. The problem is you give it away at the beginning, okay? And as a storyteller knows to save it.
To bury the lead.
Storytellers, there ain't no lead. Storytellers let the story unfold, okay? They suck you along in the narrative, okay? Mm-hmm. Whereas, when you write a piece, Bob, your first line is, evolution is true. Get over it. That kind of thing.
Now, that's Jerry Coyne's first line, actually, but don't go there.
Someone wrote that?
What's that?
Someone actually wrote that line?
I think there's a book called Why Evolution is True by a guy named Jerry Coyne, of whom I'm a big fan.
Let's not even go there. Okay, but that's my point. It's like, you begin, evolution is true, or there's something like that, mm-hmm. and what my piece, I should have just begun my narrative piece by saying people like stories. The end. Because that's really all.
That would have saved me a lot of time and trouble.
But by the way, there was a lot of negative feedback from some of the kind of webby, thinky people out there in internet world who, the one guy down in Charleston, as it happens, wrote a piece. It was a thoughtful piece, but he didn't really like my piece. I think he thought that it was too fuddy-duddy, old-fashioned, as you were saying, because I was defending long-form narrative, and he's saying, I think that newspapers need to reinvent themselves, and I did not understand exactly what he was saying news organizations should do, and my conclusion was that in the future, journalism will simply be incomprehensible, like his blog post was, but there is, a thought that, some of us might be too emotionally attached to these long stories, and there just is no market for it. I mean, there just is no market for it, And to the extent even that people do like long stories, there's no business model for that, because it takes a lot of time to do a long story. It takes weeks or months. I mean, there was a time when people would work for months and months and months on a single story that would run on a single day in the style section of the Washington Post. And I don't think that's going to happen anymore.
No.
I don't think there's a model for that.
I used to work for months on a single magazine article and make enough money to justify it. Those days are gone.
Yeah. I know.
But you're right.
Look at us. What are we doing? I'm in my attic with the weird thing here. What's happened to me?
We're providing free content to a website that makes no money. But you're building the Joel brand, and somehow you're going to be able to magically monetize that someday. Don't worry. Just keep building that brand, Joel.
Okay, let me just say something, and don't let this get around. But I've been trying to build the Joel brand for decades, and I've essentially done anything and everything I could to build the Joel brand. And no one wants the Joel brand. I mean, I'm like the discontinued line of Pepperidge Farm goldfish crackers that was like, artichoke flavored goldfish crackers that no one wants. It's like it's not like I write esoteric stuff that's
quite the contrary.
What?
I mean that in a good way.
No, I write the stuff I write stuff that's supposed to be popular. I mean, you've seen, those Why Things Are books, whatever. But
right.
Nothing works.
Those should be. Are those in print? They should be. They're great.
They
should be on the web.
Thank you for asking. No, they are not in print. Of my 6 books, the number in print would be, I think, 0. Actually, the last one might still be in print.
You should put Why Things Are through an OCR program and put it on the web for free, and each question is a different page. You could build up traffic. I'm not kidding. That should be a resource. And then you monetize the traffic somehow.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
They were great. The Why Things Are. You had that column in the Post called Why Things Are. You wrote those books.
Look at that. I got hundreds of these things.
I'm not kidding, Joel. Put them online for free. It'll extend the Joel brand, and somehow you'll figure out how to monetize it.
For free. Can you see that?
No.
Look at. You can't see. All right. Well, I've got all these books.
I have an out-of-print book somewhere. Yeah.
Anyway.
I'll get my out-of-print book.
You're showing it?
Here it is, yep.
With 3 scientists and their gods? I like that one. That was a good one. Is that the one?
Oops, that's the Japanese version. Oh, sorry. Here's the arguably cheesy jacket on the out of print.
Out of print.
Should put it on the web for free. But
what happens to this chat, whatever you call it, dialogue? Can it go out of print?
No, we hope to keep our archives online forever.
But where does it live? I mean, where is it stored?
It lives
is there
on a server, and then a backup copy lives on another server.
And does it cost money to run the server?
Yes,
and you have to pay rent? How much money does that cost?
Monthly costs for serving and storage are a few $1,000s.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you sell ads on this thing?
We have some ads.
You do? Really? For what?
Oh, major corporations.
What's that?
Major corporations.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. No, we're doing great.
Well, that's good.
Well, that's
well. But, I mean, no. Here's the point is, at some point this, a life of dealing with a smaller and smaller audience until sometimes it feels like, I'm just talking to myself. That does get old. But getting back to the narrative, the point I was trying to make in that piece is that whatever happens in the future, people need to know that there's a built-in advantage for narrative, which is that the human brain is sort of designed to like it. Okay, I mean, we naturally and instinctively like narrative. Does that make sense?
But I got two things to say to that.
Yes.
One is I think part of what is happening is that there's more and more narrative available to people in non-written form. There are more and more videos out there of a greater and greater diversity, more highbrow TV. People are spending their time doing that instead of writing. And now you may say, oh, but that's in some sense inferior. But here I would point to something in your own article, and you may say this is Steve Pinker, famous Harvard psychologist whom you quote. And he puts it this way: fiction may be, at least in part, a pleasure technology, a co-opting of language and imagery as a virtual reality device which allows a reader to enjoy pleasant hallucinations like exploring interesting territories, conquering enemies, hobnobbing with powerful people, and winning attractive mates. Well, if written narrative is a virtual reality technology, what's wrong with just using video games instead as your virtual reality technology, or video, or like watching Mad Men or something, instead of reading narrative? What's wrong with that?
I mean, the point is simply that we have evolved to listen to stories and to fill in the blanks. So 90% of the work is done. I mean, the trick of words, when you write something or even speak something, very quickly you can conjure up a whole alternative universe in someone else's brain. That's why that's the killer app. That's why, and it's not just data points, okay? People say, oh, we can boil down our journalism to, some interesting graphs or some charticles, or, there must be some way that we can, when we tell a story, have graphics pop up and we'll move the cursor around the screen and we hear people's voices, whatever. All these bells and whistles, I think, are to some extent unnecessary, because with a well-written story, you ignite that kind of narrative brain apparatus, okay, the narrative-building brain apparatus in the listener, okay? So, it was a dark and stormy night. Instantly, in the brain, you can conjure the lightning and the thunder and the rain and all that sort of stuff. It's incredible how that works. So it's that extreme suggestibility of the human brain to stories is the killer app going forward. Now, I'm not saying there's a business model there. I'm just simply saying that let's not forget. But I tell you, I got the idea for this for two reasons. One, I read a story about how at Columbia Journalism School there was a big debate in-house about how to teach journalism. Did you still want to teach the traditional stuff of how to report, how to write, how to structure a story, or should you focus more on the new media? And, cranky old curmudgeonly middle-aged guy that I am, I thought, well, no, you got to teach the basics. The basics are never going to go away. The other stuff is just platform. That's not what journalism is. I mean, yes, I think people should learn how to monkey around with your camera and all that sort of stuff and do a dialogue and blog, and so on. And I think my track record as a post is I've jumped in with both feet on the web. But at the same time, the primary rules: write a good sentence, revise, okay, report it, get it right, be accurate, be fair. All that stuff, that's the basics of what we do, not the platform. The platform has always changed. It changed from afternoon papers to morning papers. It has changed, from the day. Journalism is constantly evolving, but certain, rules should be eternal, I think. And I'm not sure where I'm going with all this, but the other thing that triggered this story, and you're probably gone now, but is the Orlando Sentinel and their new front page, which has almost no text on it. It's all bells and whistles and graphics and reefers and flags and whatnot. I mean, and photos and graphics.
You mean their web homepage or
their actual print newspaper? Is the scariest, ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Tabloids have long been like that, right?
This was the Orlando Sentinel. This is a broadsheet newspaper that gave up on telling stories. And you go on their website, and the executive editor is saying, we realize our readers don't have much time, so we're not going to give them long stories. Well, yes, people are time-pressed, okay? But they still like a well-told story. I think what's going to happen is that the boring 50-inch story is dead. You can still have a 50-inch story, but it's got to earn the space. The 80-inch story, it's going to really have to earn the space. You just can't, put out those crappy, boring, tedious, self-indulgent stories that go on unless they're really good. So to some extent, you boil away a lot of the flab in the business, and it's a bracing effect. I think it will potentially help storytelling, and to a certain degree. But, the contrary may also be true. We all may end up writing, 10-inch data dumps. I don't know. I hope not.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, there's kinds of, there's a bunch of problems. I mean, you write in this piece, which we will link to and which everyone should read. It's not so long that you don't have time to read it.
I got an email from Tom McGuane. He liked it. The writer.
The writer? Oh, McGuane, M-C-G-U-A-N-E?
That's the one.
I've heard of him. He's a writer, isn't he?
Yeah. So someone out there likes me.
And you, all these, dinosaurs whose business model is dying along with mine.
Hey, come on.
Sure, you have this lament for the death of the dinosaurs, and you get this dinosaur email. Sure. Exactly. I'll send you one, too, as my business model dies. And, I got to say, people not in the business do not appreciate how fully and completely and utterly this is the apocalypse. You know what I mean?
It's scary. I mean, at my place of business, a lot of really great people have walked out the door because we've had to downsize.
You still got a job. Do I have a job? Do I look
this
like
week?
I have a job?
I mean, November 4th, I got one. I mean, yeah, I think I'll be secure just because. Because I'll do anything.
Because you're the venerable blogger, Joel Achenbach.
I'll be the guy. I will do anything at any time. So I'm a utility infielder. But, a lot of really, heavy hitter, terrific journalists, amazing people have walked out the door. I don't want to get into
self-pity, but it's very bleak. Anyway, you write, the best feature of print is that it doesn't interrupt you. It doesn't try to link you somewhere else. It doesn't talk back. That's a killer app in and of itself. Well, you hope, but I mean, the fact is that most people read their print now in an environment where there is a lot of temptation, whether it's links within the piece or it's surrounded by stuff, around the piece, inviting people to link. And I too would like to have a captive audience, right? I mean, I would like people to read my stuff in a context where there's really nothing else tempting them, but I just don't see that happening.
Well, you understand the point. That, I mean, I really object to, for example, I think it's Time Magazine, when they run a piece online, every, second or third paragraph, they have a little headline that says, read a lot more about this interesting topic, or read a lot more about this related topic, or read a lot more about this barely, related associated topic. They keep sort of begging you to stop reading the article you're reading and click and go somewhere else. I do not understand why they would not put the links at the end of the piece and say, keep reading this till the end. I don't get that.
If it's links to their own content, the answer is they want to maximize page views, and if it's links to other people's content, I don't know, there's a different answer. But
but it says, maximizing page views is a recipe for self-destruction, because page views are not the same thing as readers. And even if you say, oh, no, we're talking about unique visitors, that's not the same thing as people who actually like your publication.
Or even
because, for example, the easiest thing you can do ever with a blog post, and I don't tend to do this much, sometimes my editors do this, but is you start writing a couple paragraphs. Like the piece I had today, the editors set it up so that you read 2 paragraphs, and then you have to click to continue reading it. right? In other words, there's an extended post. The post is broken up into two pieces.
That's one way to
the piece on the front of my web, my blog, okay? And then if you click, you get to read the rest of the item.
Yeah.
That's only set up to I think, to increase the number of page views. I can't see how it would increase the actual readership of what I wrote. It creates an extra little obstacle to jump through.
Oh, that's totally about page views and serving more ads, of course.
Yeah, it's about page views, and I guess they can reload another ad, but I guess I feel like, sometimes statistics can be deceptive.
But the imperative to make money has always corrupted journalism to some extent. It leads to more stories about gossip and sex. It leads, some advertisers to be coddled in some periodicals. The question is, what compromises do you face at any given time? Right now, the problem is just that there's no way to get appreciable revenue with an ad revenue model. But as far as long form versus short form, I do think that one thing that's just happening is that it used to be that the way you learned about a subject was you find one reader you trust, he or she guides you through this long thing, and and then you know a lot about the subject. And now it's much more about bouncing around, getting a fragment here, a fragment there. And you could say, to portray this in a positive light, that you are using more of your own analytical judgment in synthesizing this stuff into a perspective. But in any event, that is one big thing that's happening here, whether we like it or not. Are you saddened?
Okay.
You're saddened. So should we move on to your other fabulous work?
Let me say the last thing about narrative. Okay, the last thing about narrative is, you're you wrote this big old book. It took you years to do, but you're also doing, your Mr. Internet too, right? In which way do you see yourself going? Can you still write books, or at some point is it going to be
ironically, books remain a relatively viable business model. It's true that you can get about half of the advance that you could get 5 years ago for a book, but that's more than zero. And in terms of, I think that model for now is holding up probably better than the glossy magazine writing model. But there are all these question marks. If books go totally electronic, as I think they will go more and more, can publishers control the distribution of the content in a way that music producers failed to with the MP3 file, and so on. So I think in a way, and you may find I think the reason to think they can, by the way, is that especially for highbrow books, the consumers of the books are not the kind who are going to want to cheat the creator, right? Right. It's not like some 15-year-old listening to a song.
The democratization of information is not really good news for an elite purveyor such as yourself.
Well, I just made the argument, the opposite case in a way, that in terms of getting people to pay, to not try to cheat in getting hold of an electronic copy of a book and get one for free, but rather to actually pay, I'm suggesting the kind of highbrow books and earnest books may do relatively well because they attract the kinds of readers who feel they have a relationship with the creator, and the creator should be
highbrow, earnest books. Yeah, that'll sell you about 5,000 copies.
Well, that may be more. If you're getting money for each of the 5,000, that may be better than other writers are doing. But look, as I said, we're talking about the apocalypse here.
It is. We live in scary times,
perilous times.
Fortunately, we have another topic. We have another topic.
You entertain us with. Want to hit both of your recent science things real quick? The one about ARDI,
Ardipithecus. Well, that's an interesting story, in part because essentially what they've done is they've extended back further in time, a really good picture of human origins. It gets sketchy the further you go back, but this, Tim White and his colleagues have done an analysis of these bones that they came up with in Ethiopia, and this was a primate, a hominid called Ardipithecus ramidus that looks like a very good candidate for being the precursor to the Australopithecus, which is the precursor to Homo. So we're talking about, we're now another genus into the past, about 4.4 million years ago, and it was a big rollout at the AAAS in downtown DC. Very sort of huge amount of material that was published all at once, and it was exciting science. It was sort of a big moment.
Why aren't we hearing the term missing link more in association with Artie? Because isn't it the case that Artie, on the one hand, could walk upright, but on the other hand, the toes were still adapted to doing a little tree hanging?
Yeah, there is no missing link. I mean, I did the missing link, the whole concept implies that there is a gap in the fossil record. That is not the case. It's simply that as you go back in time, the fossil record gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and we know that the point at which human beings diverged from, not human beings, but the hominid line, our ancestors diverged from the ancestors of the other modern great apes maybe 7 million years ago, and there just isn't much of a fossil record from that time. It's not that there's a missing link, it's that it's foggy back there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, also...
There's no question that we see in Ardipithecus a transitional figure, because if the analysis by Tim White is correct, this was a creature that could live on the ground sometimes, but mostly lived in the trees. Whereas Lucy, which is an Australopithecus, Lucy lived mostly on the ground, okay? Could, I guess, go up in the trees, but Lucy walked upright and was a terrestrial biped, whereas Ardipithecus looks like could be a biped sometimes, but spent most of her time living on tops of branches, clambering around. What's interesting, in particular, is you're going back now 4.4 million years, although Ardipithecus has this grasping big toe. She does not have what modern apes have, which is the ability to hang upside down, suspend from a branch, and do the brachiation or whatever they call it. I mean, she's not a swinger. Okay, she doesn't swing from branch to branch. She climbs. She doesn't swing. So what that tells them is that the modern great apes have themselves evolved a great deal from the early common ancestor of about 7 million years ago.
Wait,
the common ancestor would have looked more like Ardipithecus than like a chimpanzee.
This is what I don't understand, but you mean because chimpanzees don't have that much of a grasping toe?
No, chimpanzees have a completely grasping foot. I mean, they have more than a toe.
Why is it? This is what I didn't understand. You were saying that they were saying that the ancestor common to us and chimpanzees, if you follow our lineages back to where they meet 6, 7, 8 million years ago or whatever, would have looked more like Artie than like a chimp. I don't understand the logic there, because for one thing, Artie is dated up at like 4 million years, and for another thing, Artie superficially looks like something kind of in between a chimpanzee and something like us. So what's their logic there?
I would not overthink it. I mean, yes, to me, you go back 7 million years, you're looking at something that looks like, okay, that's a monkey, right? I mean, if you look at Artie, that's a furry critter, right? Doesn't look like a human being, looks more like an ape. But if you're a paleontologist or a paleoanthropologist, and you're saying, you're looking very closely at the bones, the structures, and so on, it is striking that Ardipithecus does not appear to have some of the features of modern chimpanzees and gorillas and so forth. For example, it doesn't have the big canines on the males. The males don't have the big fearsome canines.
But why couldn't those have been lost through evolution? I mean, I don't get that.
Well, the point is that it looks like the big canines in the chimpanzees were gained through evolution, that they are an adaptive trait, okay, that those are not primitive traits, they are derived traits.
Well, if you assume...
It's the non-large canines that are more primitive. The big canines, which we'd say, oh, that's a primitive trait. No, that's a derived trait.
Could be. I just don't see the logic for them believing that already shows that. They must have some logic.
Well, I've explained it very well.
Well, you haven't sold me, but I'm a tough audience.
But, it's making my head hurt, some of this. This is hard
Well, then
stuff.
let's move on to Stardust, Joel.
That's an easy one.
Have you been writing about Stardust?
I'm supposed to be, but except I'm talking to you.
Oh, so the piece isn't out yet? Can you give us a preview?
Well, I'm doing a piece on space and sort of what it tells us, and part of the issue I'm dealing with there is wait, hold on, I have something I want to show you. Don't go anywhere. Are you still there? Don't go anywhere. Check this out, okay?
Yeah.
I wrote this piece years ago in National Geographic. It's got this. It was their January 2000 issue.
Ooh,
okay,
they paid real money back then.
Some picture of space.
How much money?
Cool.
How much money did you get for that long form piece? They paid real money back then. They still do, I think. How much?
It was good. It was living the dream, man. It was good stuff. So, anyway, but the thing about it is that I'm doing a piece sort of like I'm looking at these Hubble images of space,
right,
and kind of doing a deep reading of them. What do these things mean? So we'll see how that goes. But the one thing I was struck by is this argument, that we are star stuff. You've heard this little Carl Sagan thing. Our bodies are made out of the elements that are cooked up inside of stars. Mm-hmm. That's the only place they come from. I think that carbon is not primordial. It's a first, second, third generation element that comes from the cycling of stars. Mm. Is that not true?
Sounds right. I mean, I know there are people who assert that we are stardust.
Well, I think it's literally
true.
Lyric
too, if you remember that song.
That the heavier elements in our body, the heavier atoms, mm-hmm, oxygen and nitrogen and everything other than hydrogen and helium, all those heavier atoms are... Well, actually, I don't think there's any helium in our body because I think it's an inert element. All those heavier elements are cooked up inside of stars. And so it creates a connection between anyone who's alive, any biological organism, and stars out there. But even more than that, if you took a human being or a bunny rabbit or a tree or a plant, whatever, you could decode a tremendous amount of information about not only the planet, but the star and even the galaxy and the universe that this organism lives in. So you could reverse engineer, not reverse engineer. You could deduce so much sort of astronomical information from looking at a biological organism.
So, like,
Isn't
we
that true,
could trace your ancestry to some, like, faraway galaxy.
No,
which would explain a lot in your case. But is that what you're saying?
Here's an actual real example. If you were to take one of my teeth, mm-hmm, and analyze it very carefully, you might be able to say, oh, he's from north central Florida, because the isotopes of carbon in his teeth match the ratio of carbon, isotopes found near Hogtown Creek in North Florida.
Uh-huh, where you're from.
Okay. Yeah. And so, essentially, we are the walking kind of distillation or encoding of our environment. Not only our sort of local environment, but also our planetary environment and our stellar environment, our galactic environment, and even our cosmic environment. So, for example, the first thing you'd notice if you were an alien scientist and you had a terrestrial bunny rabbit, you'd say, oh, well, this is from a planet that has a certain amount of oxygen in its atmosphere. And you could look at the biochemistry and infer that based on how the certain molecules kind of are put together, that there was a time when the Earth did not have oxygen in the atmosphere at all, because the more primitive part of the pathway is anaerobic. Uh-huh. What do you think about that?
But could you actually say some of the star stuff in us came from like a specific galaxy or a specific something?
I don't think
You
so,
don't
because
think so? 'Cause
I
that's
think
what I want.
carbon's carbon.
I want to find my cosmic roots. You know, there are these people who get a lot of kind of a spiritual gratification, they claim, out of just thinking that they're stardust. I mean, I know somebody who's kind of active in the whole kind of, in vaguely you could say, the science and religion movement, and for them the kind of killer reassurance is, okay, we can't believe in a conventional afterlife, and this particular person doesn't believe there's any larger purpose unfolding. We could argue about that. I won't. But she says that for her, what really just vanquishes the fear of death is the idea that she is stardust. Okay, there's this eternal stuff in her. And Joel, I got to tell you, I don't know what the hell she is talking about. I just don't get that. Do you get any of that?
I mean, the oxygen and the nitrogen and the hydrogen and all that stuff, it is not going to save you from dying exactly.
She's not under
that illusion. It's all the circle of life. You know, you can think of it as it's not just stardust. It's fertilizer. Okay,
it's like the
mold. It's like the compost, the stellar compost, and eventually, what all the atoms in our body will wind up, scattered out there in the universe, and they will once again come together to form a planet, and then there'll be living things maybe, and once again there'll be someone who's a hopeless pedantic, pedagogue like yourself.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
I knew as soon as you said hopeless, I knew you were going to get personal.
But the point is, it's the great circle of cosmic life. Unless, you want to get, negative about it, all this dark energy is causing such a dramatic acceleration of the universe that it all just kind of flies apart, and you have like the great rip as opposed to the Big Bang, the big rip, and we wind up with a dark, scattered universe marked entirely by void and nothingness.
That would be sad.
Yeah, well, it'd be like what happened to the newspaper industry, except on a cosmic scale.
Ooh, that would be even worse. The ephemerality of it all is kind of depressing, but
we should add that to our next, newspaper industry is dying story.
Could be worse. Could be the whole universe.
Could be the whole universe.
Yeah, that is reassuring.
I think on that note, we may be done.
I think it's about time to go get ready to tape the World Series so that we will know what America knows by the time they watch this.
Yes, I got to go set my tape up.
Hey, well, thank you, Joel Achenbach of the venerable Washington Post Achenblog, for sharing your insights and your wit. And
I don't know about the wit or the insights.
Your comely visage.
Okay. Well, listen. Let me know what else I can do, and let's do it again.
Upload, for starters. But then after that, the next dialogue, the circle of life continues.
That's right. It's endless.
It's endless.
The thing is, even when the universe is gone, somewhere this dialogue will live on.
We'll be coursing through. The electromagnetic waves will be reaching a civilization. Finally, it will get to a civilization that appreciates it. And you know what you'll have then, Joel? A business model.
Yeah, finally, a business model.
Business model.
On a cosmic scale.
On a cosmic scale.
We're going to go intergalactic.
And
all right, should we do the 1, 2, 3?
We don't even have to. We can just say goodbye and click.
All right,
goodbye,
see you,
Joel.
buddy. All right, bye.